Hi, I'm Ryan Szymanski, curator for Battleship New Jersey Museum and Memorial. The Iowa-class battleships were in some ways designed in a bubble, largely because we didn't know the capabilities of Axis battleships. The Germans, the Italians, they're claiming that their battleships are 35,000 tons, and obviously both are making larger battleships. And I'm pretty sure everybody knew it at the time. The Japanese, on the other hand, just how much did we know about their battleships and when did we know it? That's the topic of today's video. This video is based mainly on an article by Joseph Czarnecki over on the NavWeps website. We'll have to link to it down below. It's a real short little article, maybe a page or two long, so definitely worth the read. We're not going to talk about everything in the article. We also pulled some of the primary resources that Commander Morse used in his article. Link down below, you need a JSTOR account to see that, but it's an article he wrote for Warship International probably back in the 80s or early 90s. After serving in the Navy, he went up to Battleship Cove and worked on USS Massachusetts and had access to some of the documents that were on board that ship when she was decommissioned that the museum still has. Anyway, the Iowa class is largely based on what we expected future Japanese battleships to look like and not an actual counter to what the Japanese battleships were. And that right there shows you that the US Navy didn't know all that much about Japanese battleship construction. One of the things that this was based off of was vibes and feelings that the naval attaches had. The naval attaches that we sent to Japan were almost always Japanese linguists, and they almost always worked for the Office of Naval Intelligence. The Office of Naval Intelligence, of course, produces the silhouette books with information on Japanese warships. Notably, our World War II silhouette books don't have Yamato in them at all. Even more publicly available things like Jane's fighting ships for 1945 sort of lists Yamato, but that might be a posthumous thing that was added in. Her silhouette doesn't show up on any of the silhouette pages. Had the United States known the true size of Yamato, there's a strong chance that you would have seen Montana-class battleships instead of Iowa-class battleships being built. Now that said, the naval attaches were, in addition to using vibes and feelings, they were also looking at the size of Japanese facilities. How big are the dry docks? How big are the slipways for building these ships? How big are the gun foundries? And then based off of that and seeing that they're approximately the same size as American slipways and knowing that the US Navy our ports can only take battleships up to about 40 feet. Japanese ports were closer to 35 feet at this point. That the Panama Canal limits them to less than 110 feet. That's not a requirement that the Japanese had. They don't have any canal type restrictions like the US does. But dry docks are a certain length, building slipways are a certain length. So they were able to estimate the size of ships, and let's see what they came up with. These are pulled from Mr. Czarnecki's article. So 1936 seems to be the earliest report that the US has that the Japanese are looking for future battleship construction. There's a guy there named Captain Fred Rogers. He's the naval attaché in Tokyo and also a naval intelligence officer. And he writes, or I guess I should say cables a message home to the Home Office saying that he does not believe that the Japanese are going to build treaty-restricted ships. This is right around the same time that the Japanese are pulling out of the international treaty system, the Washington and London naval treaties. He says that they will likely build warships between 45 and 55,000 tons. The next year, in 1937, Yamato is ordered and laid down. In 1938, Musashi is laid down. Also in 1938, Captain Rogers has been replaced by Captain Bemis, Harold Bemis. He reports from Japan that there are 2 battleships of considerably greater tonnage than 35,000 tons under construction, and there are plans to lay down a 3rd and possibly a 4th and he believes that they're going to be armed with 12 16-inch guns. He is partially correct in that in 1940, Shinano and number 111 are laid down. 1942, the end of 1941 in Yamato's case, and 1942 for Musashi, those two ships are completed. So now we have active Japanese battleships. So surely the U.S. knows something about them by the time that they're placed in commission, right? Well, in 1942, a document captured on Tulagi confirms the number of gun barrels that the Yamato class has. So now, for the first time, we know that they don't have 12 16-inch guns or some other weird number. The Japanese design process for the Yamatos did include a number of different barrel counts, much like the design process for the Iowa class. But we now know that they have 9 guns, whatever those main battery guns are. There was also a crude schematic of the ships. So for the first time, we know that they look sort of like contemporary ships in that they are flush-decked. They have 2 forward turrets and 1 aft turret. They have a superstructure, a single funnel. But otherwise, that still leaves a lot open to interpretation. And check out this early drawing of Yamato, which doesn't even feature a flush deck. It looks a little bit more like the Italian battleship Littorio with a single funnel. Interestingly, from this schematic, the ONI, the Office of Naval Intelligence, estimates that the ships are armed with 9 16-inch guns and come in at about 35,000 tons, which puts them similar to the North Carolina or South Dakota class battleships, which are the battleships that the United States is just placing into commission at that time. In 1943, so the United States has been in the war for 2 years. Yamato's been in the water for over a year at this point. Musashi's been in the water for over a year. We're interrogating a submarine survivor by the name of Kuboaki Takeo, and he confirms the 9-barrel count. Look, they're still just trying to figure out how many gun barrels these ships have, much less the size. ONI also finds out around this time that the guns might be 45 centimeters, which is 17.7 inches, which is significantly bigger than the roughly 41 centimeters that American battleships are armed with, actually smaller than the 46 centimeters that Yamato herself is armed with. And here we've got a replica of one of Yamato's shells compared to one of New Jersey's shells over here. Around the same time, the United States captures a Japanese aviator. He's rescued out of the water, I believe, and he tells them for the first time that the 3rd battleship, which we know is named Shinano, they did not know at that point, but that 3rd battleship is being converted into an aircraft carrier, which again, the United States looks at converting the Iowa class into aircraft carriers around the same time. So none of this is surprising. It's just they've got hard human intelligence, at this point to back it up. He also says that her size is going to be about 50,000 tons. And that is completely discredited. The US are like, there's no way. Maybe that was what her size was going to be as a battleship. But when you rebuild a battleship as a carrier without gun turrets and everything like that, she'll probably be about 30,000 tons, which again is comparable to what the battle cruiser conversions were, Lexington, Saratoga. It's comparable to what other similar sized American carriers are, like the Essex class. So they're like, okay, he's saying it was 50,000 as a battleship, it's going to be 30,000 now. Nope. And this guy's actually unaware of, the guy who said 50,000 tons is actually unaware that Shinano was going to be even heavier than that. In October of 1943, the U.S. intercepts a message about the special type 40 centimeter guns, or special type 40 centimeter ammunition that the Japanese had. This contributes to the U.S. thinking that Yamato is armed with 16-inch guns, much like the Nagato class that precedes her. It's interesting because that's exactly what the Japanese intended. When they switched to the 16-inch gun, they said it was a special type 14-inch gun. When they switched to the 18-inch gun, They said it was a special type 16-inch gun. That misinformation that the Japanese are putting out there is doing a good job of doing what it's supposed to do and keeping the United States guessing. I can't believe that we're 2 years into this war and several major campaigns, and the U.S. still doesn't know. By 1943, by the time we find this out, we've already completed 2 of the Iowa-class battleships, and 2 more are on the slipways a year from being completed. We also don't know their names. We know that the lead ship of the class is Yamato, but we think that the other 2 are called Ki and Nishin, so we don't know Musashi, Shinano, any of that. It is not until 1944 that the Office of Naval Intelligence gets some photographs that were taken of the anchorage at Truk Lagoon that shows one of the Yamato-class battleships in the corner, and taking these photographs and showing them to experts. The experts say, that looks bigger than a 16-inch gun turret. These might have 18-inch guns. And if they have 18-inch guns, then they're likely a 60,000-ton ship. This is the largest estimate that the U.S. has made up until now about the size of these ships. However, those same folks who consulted believes that this ship size is impractical. So they kind of discredit their own estimate there and say there's no way that the Japanese are building 60,000-ton ships. Their slipways can't handle that. That same year, 1944, Ed Layton, one of the guys doing intelligence that led to Midway, a very famous naval intelligence officer, he interrogates a Japanese yeoman named Noda Mitsuhara, and he had been Admiral Yamamoto's former yeoman before Yamamoto was killed the year previous. He confirms that Yamato's guns are 46 centimeters and not 40 centimeters. Remember, as a member of Yamamoto's staff, he would have been on Hotel Yamato in Truk Lagoon alongside Yamamoto. So he should have a good idea of the size of these guns. This interrogation might have also led to the first kind of accurate drawing of Yamato. Again, it's somebody who was on Yamato, so the U.S. is now starting to capture people who have seen this ship, and so we might, by this point, have a decent idea of what the ship looks like. However, just prior to the Battle of Leyte Gulf, the U.S. Navy still has some folks in it that are claiming that Yamato-class battleships have 16-inch guns and displace about 40,000 tons, which is comparable to the Iowa-class. By the end of the year, following the Battle of the Siboyan Sea, the U.S. Navy managed to get very clear photographs of Yamato and Musashi while they're under air attacks during the Battle of Leyte Gulf. And from these photographs in 1944, they finally start to revise their estimates. Everybody starts to get on board with the idea that these are about 60,000-ton ships with 18-inch guns, which is funny because by the end of 1944, when we've decided that, we've already sunk Musashi, we've already sunk Shinano. So Yamato is the only one left. Number 111, the fourth one that was going to be built, had been built about 30% and then scrapped on the building ways. In 1945, we get some additional photographs of Yamato operating in the inland sea. And then again, we get some pretty good photographs during Operation Tengo when Yamato is sunk in April of 45. And by this point, we finally have enough information to have a good idea about this. Now, after the war, the Japanese destroy many of the surviving blueprints and documents relating to the Yamato class. So as Japan is getting close to surrendering, some of these are destroyed in the firebombing raids. Some of them are intentionally destroyed by the Japanese so they don't fall into American hands. However, the U.S. Technical mission to Japan post-war will be able to get a hold of blocks of armor and things like that, shells lying around. So we'll have some of that information. But it's interesting, to this day, there are still some things we don't know about Yamato's design because so few of those plans survive. It is absolutely incredible to me just how late in the game it is by the time that the United States know accurate information about the Yamato class battleships. The Yamatos come in at somewhere between 60 and 70,000 tons, depending on their load. Really 65 to 70,000 tons is more accurate. So the US Navy is consistently underestimating the size of the ships. You know, misestimating the size of the guns makes sense, especially given the misinformation that the Japanese are putting out about that. It's also interesting that it takes photographs of the ship and analysis of those photographs to really convince people that being able to capture people who served on the ship or documents didn't really convince us. And it's also incredible how few prisoners and how few documents the United States is able to take. Well, obviously, if we had a lot of official documents, we might have believed stuff sooner, but the Japanese did a good job at document retention and destruction. And of course, it was less common for Japanese sailors to surrender or be captured. So we're falling back on photo analysis, which of course is an imperfect science. Let us know in the comment section down below if you'd like to see a future video about some of the steps that the Japanese took to hide the size of their battleships. Obviously, that was an intentional thing that they were doing. But let us know in the comment section down below if you want to hear about that, and if the United States took any similar steps in hiding the size of our own battleships. What do you think is the most impressive design feature of the Yamato class? What's something that you would want to keep secret about Yamato or New Jersey that you wouldn't want their enemies to find out? Let us know in the comment section down below. Battleship New Jersey receives operating support from the New Jersey Department of State, also from a number of other businesses and private individuals like yourselves. We really appreciate your support. There's a link in the description below if you'd like to donate to support the museum. You can also support us by liking, sharing, and subscribing so more people find out about the museum and our channel. Thanks for watching.